My name is Elena Vance. I am 28 years old. And right now, I am buried up to my neck in the scorching sands of Death Valley, watching my own mother and father drive away with my 4-year-old daughter. The desert sun felt like a physical weight crushing my skull. The heat index had to be well over 115 degrees, and the lithium-infused sedative they had, slipped into my water, was still making my vision blur. Every breath tasted like dust and copper. Through the shimmering heat waves, I could see the taillights of my father's black SUV fading into the horizon. Beside me, jutting out of the cracked earth like a cruel grave marker, was my sister Chloe's silver charm bracelet. She has Lily now. My mother's final, icy whisper echoed in my mind right before the shovel hit the dirt. Chloe deserves a family, Elena. You were always too selfish to share. They hadn't just left me to die. They had executed a flawless, coordinated abduction, leaving me trapped in the most inhospitable terrain on Earth, while they delivered my daughter to a sister I hadn't seen in 3 years, a sister who was legally dead. My throat was too parched to scream, but as the distant roar of the SUV's engine completely died out, a terrifyingly distinct sound broke the desert silence. It was the rhythmic clicking of a countdown timer, buried in the sand right behind my head. The clicking was sharp, metallic, and fast. It wasn't the slow tick of a wristwatch. It was a digital countdown. I strained my neck, the rough sand scraping against my raw skin like sandpaper. I managed to twist my head just enough to see it. Half buried in the dirt, a heavy-duty military-grade Pelican case was wired. To a digital display, the glowing red numbers. Red 0542, my parents hadn't just left me to die of dehydration. They had set a fuse. 5 minutes and 42 seconds before whatever was inside. That box tore me to pieces, panic flooded my system, overriding the lingering weight of the sedative. I began to thrash, digging my chin into the earth, trying to use my jaw to scoop away the compacted sand around my shoulders. The heat was blinding, and every movement felt like pushing through concrete. Think, Elena, think. My father was a retired logistical engineer for a defense contractor. He didn't make mistakes. If he buried me here, he calculated the exact depth required to pin my limbs. But he was also meticulous. He wouldn't leave a bomb just to erase me. He was covering a trail. With a desperate, agonizing heave, I managed to free my right collarbone from the sand's grip. My hand was still pinned deep below, but as I wiggled my fingers, they brushed against something, hard and metallic. In my front jeans pocket, my car. Keys, the countdown blared, 0315. I forced my shoulder upward, ignoring the agonizing pop in my joint. I clawed through the suffocating dirt inside my own pocket, my fingernails ripping as I snagged the metal ring. I dragged it upward inch by agonizing inch, until my hand broke through the surface of the sand, clutching the keys. I didn't use them to dig. Instead, I aimed the key fob over my head toward the Pelican case and slammed the panic button. A loud, piercing alarm didn't wail from the box. Instead, a tiny mechanical click echoed inside it. The countdown abruptly froze at 1, 2. The lid of the case popped open an inch. With the last ounce of my strength, I threw my weight forward, pulling my torso out of the loose upper layer of dirt. I crawled on my belly, dragging my lower half out of the earth like a drowning person climbing onto a dock. I dragged myself to the open box, gasping for air, expecting wires and C4. Instead, inside the case sat a pristine, satellite-linked tablet and a legal document sealed in plastic. I tore the plastic open. It wasn't a bomb schematic. It was a certified adoption decree, dated 3 days from now, signed by a judge. But it wasn't my sister. Chloe's name listed as the adoptive mother. The tablet screen suddenly flashed to life, a video call connecting automatically. A face appeared on the screen, a woman with sharp features and cold, calculating eyes. It wasn't Chloe. It was the district attorney of Los Angeles, the woman currently prosecuting my father for corporate fraud. Elena, the DA said, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. I see your parents delivered the collateral. Now, let's talk about how you're going to save your daughter's life. The DA's face on the screen was crisp, unaffected by the brutal desert heat radiating off the tablet. Victoria Vance wasn't her name. Her name was Evelyn Pierce, but looking at her sharp jawline and the distinct, unmistakable shape of her eyes, a sickening realization hit me. She looked exactly like my father. You're his sister, I croaked, my voice sounding like broken glass. He didn't just give you Lily, your family. Half-sister, Evelyn corrected coldly, adjusting her tailored suit jacket. And your father is a man of transaction, Elena. He stole $50 million in classified defense tech from my firm. The grand jury is about to indict him. But if I suddenly lose the primary state's witness, him, the case evaporates. Lily is my insurance policy to ensure he stays compliant and vanishes. Where is Chloe? I screamed, the sand in my throat choking me. They said Chloe took her. Evelyn let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Chloe is exactly where she has been for 3 years. Elena, in a private medical facility, breathing through a machine because of what you did. Your parents lied to you. They needed a villain to make you swallow the sedative quietly. They told you Chloe took Lily so you'd hate your sister instead of hunting them. My mind spun. The accident 3 years ago, the one everyone told me, Chloe died in, she was alive, and my parents had used my guilt to blindside me. Now listen closely. Evelyn leaned into the camera. Your father left a hard drive hidden in your apartment in LA. It contains the decryption keys to the tech he stole. You have exactly 24 hours to retrieve it and bring it to the Santa Monica Pier. If you call the police, I sign the final adoption papers. Lily becomes mine legally, and you will never see her face again. How am I supposed to get to LA? I gasped, looking around at the vast, empty expanse of Death Valley. I'm in the middle of nowhere. Your father's SUV has a GPS tracker. Evelyn smiled thinly. I'm sending the coordinates of where he parked his backup vehicle to that tablet now. It's 3 miles north. You better start running, Elena. Oh, and one more thing. The tablet screen flickered, switching from Evelyn's face to a live camera feed. It was a small, windowless room. Lily was sitting at a small wooden table, coloring with a red crayon. She looked up at the camera, her eyes red from crying. Mommy? She whispered. Behind her, a shadow crossed the doorway. A man stepped into the frame, holding a syringe. It was my father, 24 hours. Elena, Evelyn's voice returned as the screen went black. The clock is running. I stood up on trembling legs, the heat burning through the soles of my shoes. I looked north. Nothing but shimmering salt flats. But as I took my first step, a sharp ping echoed from the tablet. A message appeared on the screen. But it wasn't from Evelyn. It was an encrypted text from an unknown number. Don't go to LA. The hard drive isn't there. They are setting you up to take the fall for the defense theft. Look inside the silver bracelet. My fingers shook as I knelt back into the scorching sand, snatching up Chloe's silver charm bracelet. It was hot enough to blister my skin, but I didn't care. I examined the heavy silver links, my heart hammering against my ribs. Look inside. I focused on the largest charm, a hollow silver heart Chloe had worn since we were teenagers. With cracked fingernails, I pried at the seam. It didn't budge. Desperate, I smashed the charm against a jagged rock. The silver split open, revealing not a microchip or a note, but a tiny rolled-up piece of microfilm. Holding it up against the blinding desert sun, my vision blurred. It was a blueprint, not of a weapon, but of the private medical facility Evelyn had mentioned. And stamped across the top in bold red letters was a word that made my blood run cold. Scavenger. Scavenger wasn't a defense project. It was an illegal organ harvesting program disguised as a long-term care facility, funded by Evelyn's firm. Suddenly, the pieces snapped together with horrifying clarity. They didn't want Lily for an adoption. Chloe wasn't just on a breathing machine. Her organs were failing. Lily wasn't insurance to keep my father quiet. Lily was a genetic match. They were going to harvest my daughter to save my sister. A sudden, violent roar shattered the desert silence. I spun around, shielding my eyes against a wall of dust. A battered, heavily modified off-road truck slammed to a halt less than 20 feet away. The door flung open, and a man stepped out into the shimmering heat. He wore tactical gear, a dust mask hanging around his neck, and a heavy Glock holstered at his hip. I backed up, gripping the tablet like a weapon. Who are you? Did Evelyn send you? The man pulled down his mask, revealing a face covered in jagged burn scars. If Evelyn sent me, you'd already be a corpse. Elena, he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. My name is Miller. I was your father's head of security until he framed me for the tech theft. He pointed a finger at the silver heart in my hand. I sent you that text. Your parents aren't driving to LA. They're already at the facility in Nevada, and they've moved the surgery up. We don't have 24 hours. We have 4. Before I could answer, a high-pitched whine cut through the air. Miller's eyes went wide as he looked past my shoulder at the horizon. A military-grade drone was descending rapidly from the sky, its underbelly camera locked directly onto us. and hanging beneath its frame was a payload of dual-mounted automatic rifles. "Get down!" Miller roared, lunging forward. He tackled me into the dirt just as the drone's barrels flashed with blinding fire. A hail of high-caliber rounds ripped through the sand where we had been standing, kicking up a blinding curtain of dust. The deafening cracks of the gunfire echoed across the empty salt. "Flats." Miller scrambled to his feet, hauling me up by my vest. "To the truck! Move!" We sprinted across the baking earth. Behind us, the drone pivoted with terrifying, robotic speed, its rotors whining as it angled down for a second strafing run. The red targeting laser washed over my shoulder. Miller yanked open the passenger door, shoving me inside before diving across the driver's seat. He slammed the truck into reverse, just as another burst of gunfire chewed through the hood, shattering the windshield into a spiderweb of cracks. Shards of glass rained down on us. "Hold on!" Miller slammed the gear into drive, flooring the accelerator. The modified truck fishtailed, tires biting into the loose sand before launching us forward across the desert floor. The drone mirrored our movement instantly, hovering 100 feet above, tracking our trajectory like a hawk tracing a field mouse. "Can you shoot it?" I screamed over the roar of the engine, shielding my face from the wind rushing through the broken windshield. "It's armored." "A pistol won't pierce the chassis," Miller swore, wrenching the steering wheel violently to avoid a jagged rock formation. "Evelyn's firm manufactures these things." "It's locked onto the GPS signature of the tablet you're holding." I looked down at the satellite tablet in my lap. The screen was still active, showing the live feed of my daughter Lily in that sterile room. If I threw it out, I'd lose the only window I had into where they were keeping her. "If I destroy it, we lose the feed," I shouted. "If you don't throw it, we're dead in 30 seconds. Miller countered, pointing ahead. Directly in front of us was a steep canyon drop-off, a dead end. The drone was already dropping lower, aligning itself perfectly with our path to pin us against the canyon wall. I looked at the tablet screen one last time. Lily was no longer coloring. The video showed my mother entering the room, gently picking her up and placing her onto a mobile gurney. They were prepping her for the surgery. My heart broke, but rage took over. I gripped the tablet, didn't throw it out the window. Instead, I jammed it flat against the truck's metal dashboard, directly under the air conditioning vent, and smashed the key ring into the charging port, causing a violent spark. "Miller, the fuel tank in the back," I yelled. "Do you have a spare?" "Yeah, a 5-gallon jerry can in the truck bed." "Why?" "Ram the canyon wall." Miller didn't hesitate. He braced himself and slammed the truck directly into the base of the rocky incline. The impact deployed the airbags with a violent pop, blinding us momentarily as the truck ground to a halt. I threw open the door, grabbed the short-circuited sparking tablet, and bolted toward the back of the truck. The drone surged over the hood, its weapons rotating toward me. With all the strength I had left, I flung the sparking tablet straight into the exposed Jerry. Ken in the truck, bed and dove behind a boulder, the drone's targeting laser swept across the truck bed. A single round hit the tablet. The lithium battery exploded and ignited the gasoline. A massive fireball erupted, swallowing the rear of the truck in a roaring sheet of flame. The concussive blast slammed into the drone, warping its plastic rotors and sending the multi-million-dollar machine spiraling violently into the canyon wall, where it shattered into burning scrap metal. Thick black smoke filled the air. I crawled out from behind the boulder, coughing, my face covered in soot. Miller was already coughing his way out of the driver's side, his shirt singed but alive. We had destroyed the eye in the sky. But as the smoke began to clear, I looked down at the burning wreckage of the truck, our only ride out of death. Valley was completely engulfed in flames. We were stranded 40 miles from the nearest highway, with less than 4 hours to save my daughter. Then, from the glove box of the burning truck, a faint metallic beep began to echo. It wasn't the tablet. It was Miller's satellite radio, and a voice was coming through the static. It was my father's. "Elena, if you can hear this, Evelyn found out. She knows I tried to warn you. They've locked me in the sub-basement with Lily. You have 3 hours before they open the clean room. Don't come through the front door." The audio cut out into harsh white noise as the radio finally melted. The radio hissed and went dead, leaving nothing but the sound of crackling flames and our own ragged breathing. My father had tried to save us. The realization hit like a physical blow. He hadn't been the monster. He was a prisoner trapped in his own web of corporate treason. "Miller!" I turned to him, the desert wind whipping ash across my face. What did he mean? Use the what? Miller didn't answer immediately. He stared at the smoldering wreckage of his truck, his scarred face tightening. Then, his eyes shifted toward the base of the canyon wall we had just crashed into. "The old Death Valley borax mines," Miller whispered, walking toward a collapsed wooden structure half buried under decades of rock slides. Before Evelyn's firm built the scavenger facility across the Nevada border, this entire mountain was honeycombed with extraction tunnels. The facility's sub-basement connects directly to the deepest shafts for discrete waste disposal. He kicked away a rotten timber, revealing a heavy iron grate padlocked to a concrete frame. "It's a 2-mile hike through absolute darkness. No air conditioning, no light. We don't need light," I said, my voice hardening as I gripped Chloe's silver bracelet tight in my fist. "We just need to get inside." Miller used the butt of his heavy Glock to smash the rusted padlock. The iron grate groaned open, releasing a blast of stale, subterranean air that smelled of sulfur and old rot. We dropped into the blackness. For 40 minutes, we moved by the faint glow of Miller's tactical watch face. The ceiling was low, forcing us to hunch over as we navigated rotting support beams and steep, crumbling drop-offs. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crunch of our boots on loose shale. Suddenly, Miller stopped, shoving his arm across my chest to pin me against the damp rock wall. Up ahead, a faint sliver of artificial fluorescent light cut through the gloom. We had reached the perimeter of the facility, but as we crept closer to the opening, the sound of muffled voices echoed down the shaft. I peered around the jagged rock edge. We were looking into a pristine, white-tiled corridor through a heavy steel ventilation mesh. 2 armed guards in black tactical gear stood right outside the shaft, their rifles slung over their chests. But it wasn't the guards that made my breath catch in my throat. Between them was a gurney. Lying on it, hooked up to a portable heart monitor, was my sister Chloe. Her eyes were sunken, her skin translucent, but she was awake. And standing over her, holding a tablet displaying Lily's vitals, was my mother. "She's a perfect match." "Chloe," my mother was saying, her voice soothing, completely devoid of guilt. "A few more hours and you'll have your life back. Elena was always a survivor. She'll manage." "Trap. And the little girl?" Chloe's voice was a frail, raspy whisper. My mother patted her hand with a chilling smile. "Don't worry about the details, sweetie. Just rest." Horror twisted into blinding rage inside my chest. My mother wasn't just sacrificing Lily. She had brainwashed Chloe into believing it was a legitimate donation. Before I could move, a heavy hand gripped my shoulder from behind. I spun around thinking it was Miller, but Miller was already on the ground. A taser prong discharging blue electricity through his vest. Standing over him in the darkness of the tunnel was my father. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, but he held a silenced pistol aimed directly at my chest. "I told you not to come through the front. Elena," he whispered, his eyes wide with a manic desperation. "But you didn't let me finish. They wanted you to find the tunnels. The silence in the tunnel was suffocating. My father's hand was trembling. The barrel of the silenced pistol, weaving slightly in the dim light of Miller's watch. Miller lay motionless at our feet, his muscles still spasming slightly from the taser shock. "Dad, lower the gun," I breathed, keeping my hands visible. "You warned me on the radio. You said you were locked in the sub-basement with Lily." "I was," my father hissed, his voice cracked with panic. "Until Evelyn let me out. Elena, you don't understand how deeply she controls this place. The moment you short-circuited that satellite tablet in the desert, it triggered a network-wide lockdown protocol. She knew exactly where you'd go when the sky drone failed. She wanted you in these tunnels." "Why?" I demanded, taking a half-step forward. "Because the adoption decree isn't just a piece of paper. Elena, it requires a maternal, biological signature or a certified death certificate to bypass the federal registry. Instantly," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "They don't just need Lily's organs for Chloe. They need you dead inside this facility so Evelyn can claim absolute legal custody of the tech, assets tied to Lily's trust fund. If you die in the desert, it's a missing person case. If you die here, they control the narrative." Suddenly, a loud pneumatic hiss echoed from the ventilation shaft behind us. I spun around. The heavy steel mesh we had been looking through didn't just sit there. It slid upward into the ceiling. The white-tiled corridor was completely empty now. My mother, Chloe, and the guards were gone. Instead, standing in the middle of the brightly lit hallway, looking directly into the dark tunnel at us, was Evelyn Pierce. She held a sleek, silver remote control in her hand. How touching! Evelyn's voice boomed through the corridor's PA system, her smile sharp and predatory. "The family reunion is complete. Thank you for bringing her right to the processing sector, Richard." I turned sharply to my father. The pistol in his hand wasn't aimed at me anymore. He was staring at Evelyn, his face turning a ghostly pale. "Richard," Evelyn said coldly over the speaker, "you played your part. You convinced her to enter the blind spot. Now step across the threshold, or I instruct the surgeon to begin the extraction on the child right now." Without anesthesia, my father looked at me, an expression of profound, agonizing regret crossing his face. "Forgive me, Elena. I had to make sure you got close enough to have a chance." Before I could scream, my father didn't step toward Evelyn. Instead, he lunged backward, grabbing the heavy iron tunnel gate we had entered through, and slammed it shut, locking himself inside the dark mine shaft with a recovering Miller. He threw his weight against the iron bars, shoving his silenced pistol through the grate and pressing it into my hands. "The sub-basement vault is directly beneath her feet, Elena," he roared as alarms began to blare throughout the facility. "The override code is Lily's birthday! Run!" A heavy steel fire door began to slide down from the ceiling of the corridor, threatening to seal the tunnel off from the facility entirely. Evelyn's face twisted into rage as she realized my father had betrayed her. "Securities! Sector 4, terminate the intruder!" I didn't look back. I dove under the closing fire door, sliding onto the slick white tiles of the facility just as the massive steel barrier slammed, shut behind me, cutting me off from the tunnels forever. I was inside the lion's den, armed with a single pistol, and the red digital clocks on the hallway walls were counting down the final 60 minutes. The red lights pulsed against the sterile white walls, casting long bloody shadows down the corridor. Every beat of the alarm felt like a hammer striking my chest. 60 minutes. I gripped my father's pistol, the metal slick against my sweaty palm. I sprinted down the hall, following the glowing directional signs toward the elevator bank. Evelyn's voice echoed over the PA system, no longer calm, stripped of all corporate diplomacy. "Lock down Sector 4. Vent the anesthetic gas into the lower corridors." A sharp, sweet smell began to drift from the ceiling vents. My lungs burned. I tore a strip of fabric from the hem of my shirt and tied it tightly over my nose and mouth, throwing my weight against the heavy push bar of a stairwell door. I plunged down into the darkness of the sub-basement. 2 flights down, the stairs ended at a massive, reinforced steel door with a digital keypad. A brass plaque read, "Sub-basement 2. Specialized research and labs." This was it, the clean room. I rushed to the keypad. The digital display blinked in a cold blue hue, demanding an 8-digit administrator. PIN. My hands shook as I punched in Lily's. Birthday, 10/14/2021. The keypad flashed green. The heavy pneumatic seals broke with a loud thud, and the door swung open. The room inside was a nightmare of chrome and glass. In the center sat 2 surgical tables, separated by a pane of one-way glass. On the left table lay my daughter Lily, a web of monitors taped to her small chest, her eyes closed in a deep, medically induced sleep. On the right table was Chloe, surrounded by automated life support systems. And standing between them, holding a scalpel, was my mother. "Stop!" I screamed, raising the pistol, aiming it directly at her heart. "Step away from her." My mother didn't flinch. She slowly turned around, her face completely calm under her surgical mask. She pulled the mask down, looking at me with a chilling, vacant pity. "You won't shoot me, Elena," she said softly, stepping closer to Lily's gurney. "Because if my heart rate drops, the automated anesthetic drip connected to Lily's IV delivers a fatal overdose. Evelyn programmed the system herself. We rise together, or we die together." "She's your granddaughter," I sobbed, my finger trembling against the trigger. "How can you do this?" "And Chloe is my daughter," she snapped back, her voice suddenly sharp as steel. "You had your life, Elena. You had your chances. Chloe has been trapped in a living hell because of your reckless driving 3 years ago. It's time to balance the ledger." "It wasn't an accident." A voice boomed from the doorway behind me. I spun around. Miller was leaning heavily against the doorframe, his tactical vest torn, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead. In his hand, he held a portable tablet displaying a black and white security archive. 3 years ago, the brake lines on Chloe's car weren't severed by accident. "Elena," Miller gasped, coughing up dark fluid. "I found the maintenance logs on your father's server before he locked me out. Your parents didn't frame me for the tech theft. They used that theft to buy Chloe's way into this program. They targeted your car that night. You were supposed to be the donor 3 years ago. My world shattered. The accident that ruined my sister's life It wasn't my fault. It was a botched harvest organized by my own parents. Is that true? I whispered, turning back to my mother. Before she could answer, the glass observation window behind her shattered into a million pieces. Evelyn Pierce stepped through the shards, holding a submachine gun, a squad of heavily armed guards flanking her. The ledger is closed, Evelyn said, raising her weapon. Kill them both. The world slowed to a crawl. The deafening roar of Evelyn's submachine gun tore through the sterile room. But Miller was already moving. With a final heroic surge of adrenaline, he threw his body directly into the line of fire, shielding me from the hail of bullets. The impacts threw him backward, crashing into the medical monitors. The heart rates of both Chloe and Lily flatlined on the screens as wires were torn from their mounts. Miller! I screamed. I dove behind a stainless steel surgical cart as Evelyn's guards advanced, their boots crunching on the shattered glass. I popped out from the side, firing my father's silenced pistol. 3 shots, rapid and precise. 2 guards dropped, but a stray bullet struck the main anesthesia delivery terminal behind my mother. A thick, pressurized cloud of white vapor exploded from the ruptured tank. No! My mother shrieked, instantly coughing as the concentrated sedative filled the air. She stumbled backward, her hand flailing, accidentally knocking the surgical tray to the floor. The scalpel clattered away. The air filtration is compromised. Fall back! Evelyn ordered, her voice muffled as she pulled her collar over her face. She fired a blind, warning burst toward my cart before backing out toward the reinforced exit doors. Seal the room! Let them suffocate in it. The heavy steel emergency doors began to slide shut, threatening to lock us in the gas-filled chamber. The sedative gas was dropping my mother instantly. She slumped against Chloe's gurney, her eyes rolling back. I could feel my own lungs burning, my vision tunneling into blackness. I had seconds before I passed out. I scrambled on my hands and knees through the blinding white fog, toward Lily. I ripped the IV lines from her small arms, scooped her up into my chest, and turned toward my sister. Chloe was staring at me through a haze of smoke, her oxygen mask barely keeping her conscious. She looked at Lily, then up at me. In her fading eyes, there wasn't malice. There was horror. She finally understood what our parents had planned. With a weak, trembling hand, Chloe reached out and pushed a small, red button hidden beneath her mattress frame. It wasn't a medical alert. It was the manual fire suppression override. Instantly, a massive blast of high pressure, emergency air flooded the room from the floor vents, blowing the heavy sedative gas upward and out through the ceiling exhausts. The air cleared. I gasped for breath, clutching Lily tightly. I looked back at Chloe, but her eyes were closed. The monitor beside her gave a single, continuous, agonizing beep. Her heart had stopped. She had used her final ounce of strength to clear the air for us. Elena, a raspy voice called from the floor. It was Miller. He was bleeding out, his chest soaked in crimson. He held up a blood-stained thumb drive. Your father gave me this before he locked the tunnel. It's the entire encryption and the legal broadcast routing. Plug it into the main frame by the exit. It overrides the lockdown. I took the drive, tears streaming down my face. I carried Lily to the main terminal by the ceiling door, jammed the drive into the port, and slammed my hand on the flashing screen. The facility alarm suddenly changed cadence. The red pulsing lights turned a bright, flashing amber. A computerized voice echoed. System intrusion detected. All archival. Data and live feeds routed to federal authorities. Broadcasting. Live sector evidence. The legal adoption was dead. The corporate theft was exposed. The entire world was currently watching a live broadcast of the scavenger facility. But as the heavy exit door groaned back open, revealing the path to freedom, a shadow blocked the light. Evelyn Pierce stood there, her face twisted into a demonic mask of pure fury. She had a heavy combat knife in her hand, her guns gone, completely pushed over the edge by the destruction of her empire. You ruined everything, she whispered, stepping into the room. You don't leave here alive. Evelyn lunged, the silver blade of the combat knife slicing through the air toward my throat. I ducked beneath her arm, shielding Lily with my body as the blade bit deep into the shoulder strap of my vest. The force of her momentum slammed us both against the hard linoleum floor. Lily tumbled from my arms, crying out as she woke up from the sedative, her small hands clutching at the air. Mommy. Stay down, Lily, I roared. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She pivoted with a soldier's precision, bringing the heavy boot of her tactical gear down toward my ribs. The impact knocked the wind out of my lungs. sending my father's pistol skittering across the floor and out of reach. She pinned my shoulder with her knee, the knife raised high above my chest, its edge gleaming under the amber emergency lights. "Your father's tech belongs to me," Evelyn snarled, her breath hot and ragged against my face. "Your daughter belongs to me. You are nothing but an administrative error I am about to correct." As the blade descended, I didn't try to block it. Instead, I reached out with my right hand, my fingers wrapping around the only weapon. I had left Chloe's silver charm bracelet, still looped tightly around my knuckles. With a scream of raw, primal fury, I whipped my fist upward. The heavy silver links and the shattered edges of the broken heart charm caught Evelyn directly across her eyes. She shrieked in agony, blinding crimson instantly pooling down her face as she lost her grip on the knife. She stumbled backward, clutching her eyes, completely defenseless. I didn't use the knife to finish it. Justice wasn't a blade in a dark basement. Justice was already happening. Behind her, through the open facility doors, the distant, thundering roar of federal tactical helicopters began to shake the very foundations of the subterranean bunker. The live broadcast Miller had activated had done its job. The cavalry was here. I scooped Lily into my arms, pulling her tightly against my chest as she sobbed into my shoulder. "I've got you, baby. I've got you." I walked past Evelyn, who was screaming curses into the darkness, and stepped out of the clean room. I didn't look back at my mother, slumped beside the sister who had sacrificed her final breath to save us. I climbed the stairs, carrying my daughter out of the bowels of the earth and into the blinding light of the Nevada sun. Flashing blue and red lights painted the desert landscape. Dozens of federal agents were pouring out of armored vehicles, storming the facility. A medic rushed toward me, wrapping a warm blanket around Lily's trembling shoulders. My father was there, handcuffed but standing by a black sedan, his head bowed. As he saw me walk out with Lily safe in my arms, a single tear tracked through the dust on his face. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement that the debt had been paid. He was going to prison for the rest of his life, but his granddaughter was free. I sat on the bumper of the ambulance, holding Lily close as the desert wind whipped the sand around our feet. The heat of Death Valley didn't feel like a grave anymore. It felt like the dawn of a new life. I looked down at Lily, her brown eyes staring back up at me with absolute trust. "Are we going home, Mommy?" she whispered. I kissed her forehead, tasting the salt of the desert and the sweetness of survival. "Yes, baby," I said, my voice steady and unbroken. "We're finally safe."